So I'm a fourth generation beater and sewer. What that means is that my great grandma taught my grandma taught my mom, and my mom taught me. And I'm currently teaching my son, who's a fifth generation beater and sewer. So I was raised with a needle in my hand, a needle and thread. My mom was always beating and sewing, but mainly beating. And I'd sit there and I'd watch her and I'd help her. And then I started getting into beating. And at a very young age, one of my first projects was beading. It was called a friendship bracelet. And that's what I started beading. And I started off with a small project like that just to get used to it, holding the little tiny needle and threading the needle. And it was fun. I liked it. And, it was just normal seeing my mom do that. My grandma is always beading and sewing. So it was normal for me from that aspect of beading and sewing. And I grew up in a family business. My mother and my auntie, they owned a small convenience store located in the heart of Rocky Boy, my home, located in the agency. And it was, they sold cigarettes and gas and just like chips and candy. And so my mom and my grandmas and my auntie, they would always keep a full display case of beadwork, because when they'd get visitors from other places that would come for the powwow or different events, they would stop in and they would buy something. So the entrepreneurial side, I was born into it. I grew up in, a small convenience store, so I always seen my mom and my auntie being entrepreneurs, and I really look up to them now that I'm an entrepreneur, because in their day, in the late 80s, when they purchased the business and they had it through all of the 90s, I understand now the hard work and everything they went through, especially too in that time and era. There was no grants, or it was hard to get loans for Indigenous women, for Native American women. That wasn't heard of. There was a lot of prejudice and stuff. So you just couldn't walk into a bank and be guaranteed a loan because you're a Native American woman from the reservation. So I completely understand now their work ethic and their hunger to survive and take care of their family. And in like that entrepreneurial spirit, like that's what I love about being an entrepreneur is that driving force. Like entrepreneurs, they always have the next idea. They're not scared of failure. Like they just go for it, whether anybody believes in them or not. And I really contribute that to my mom and my auntie for having that family business of that entrepreneurial spirit, for taking care of the whole family. They just didn't take care of their kids and their husbands. They took care of my grandmas. They took care of their brothers, their sisters, and their kids. It was a family business. And so that's how I got into being an entrepreneur. So in high school, I just took all the business classes I possibly could. And even if they didn't offer, my high school is very small. At that time, it was a Class C school. And they didn't offer a lot of business classes that other Class B, Class A, and Class AA schools offered. And so I would work with the business teacher and be like, well, can you work something out for me where I could take this class independently, even though our school don't offer it, and go through getting it approved. And then my school was yeah. So then I took as much business class as I could. So I always knew I wanted to be in business. I always found it fascinating that business people, they touch your money, no matter what you what job you take, guess what? At the end of the day, a business person is making your check, is touching your money. So I always, found that fascinating. So I have a double major in business administration and psychology from the University of Mary. And, I'm really proud of that because it was really hard for me to get that degree. I worked really hard and took extra classes, and then I didn't realize I liked psychology until I got into college, and then it was just like I was like, oh, I like psychology, because I'm a people person. I really like conversations with people and meeting people and trying new experiences. So the psychology part, I think that's where it came into play for me. And then I always was into fashion design. I guess fashion. I love fashion. Like anybody that knows me just knows my love for fashion. And so when I was in high school, there was no platform for Indigenous designers like how there is today. We didn't have Indigenous designers to look up to. And in high school, it really wasn't like popular or common like how it is now, like to wear beaded earrings or, to have like my shirt that has being Indigenous is beautiful. There was nothing like that. And so it was hard for me to express myself in high school, like to really express like how I wanted to dress, like what I thought in my mind of how I wanted to show the world, like my styling skills and stuff like that. It was hard because, I got bullied. Like there was a certain dress code. Like you couldn't just come to school, there was a dress code. This, I'm sure now in schools, there's dress codes like hoodies, like all the high schoolers wear hoodies, even on the hottest days, like that's a dress code. So, there's a dress code. There's always been a dress code in schools and stuff, not necessarily a dress code by the school administration, but a dress code amongst your peers, a dress code about what's trending, a dress code what your favorite hip hop star or movie star likes or wears. And so, you had to live by that code. I mean, or else if you didn't, then, you got bullied and singled out, and nobody wants that. So I didn't really find my style until I moved away from my community. I moved out of state, and then I went into college. And even in college, I didn't find my style. In college, I felt really out of place then because I was the minority. And, and it made it known that I was the minority in college. And I was poor. I had my son when I was 18, just a couple months before I graduated. So when I moved to college, I had, this newborn baby. And so I was super poor in college. Like I couldn't dress like how, my peers were dressing and everything. It was crazy. So I really sewed and I really beaded just to get by, to make ends meet. And I didn't, fully develop into my personal style till after college, until I started traveling. I was part of a nonprofit, and so I started traveling around Indian country on preserving the language and the culture. And so it was on culture preservation, the nonprofit I traveled with. And so that's when I started developing my personal style, and I really got into how I wanted to be. But then still too, I was still held back from a certain aspect because our Indian ways, especially the woman, you're taught to be humble and modest and stuff. And then, so I still couldn't really show how I wanted to, because, I always had to be modest and humble because of traveling and, practice in that way. So my personal style, I feel like just developed just within the past 8-7 years really. But People always like knew or just assumed I was part of the fashion industry in some shape or form, just because when they would see me, they would just like the way I looked and like how I dressed, or like, where'd you get that from, or who made it, and always ask me questions. And then, so people just assumed I was a part of it, but I really didn't get into the fashion industry with myself until 6 years ago when I coordinated my very first fashion show in my community. So in 2020, during the pandemic, there was a call upon the sewing community to make face masks. And I kept talking to my family about it. I was like, you know what? I really want to make these face masks. And then, my family was just, kind of laughing at me, or like, okay, Rebekah, like you and one of your ideas again. And I'm like, no, and so I was like, so I started like YouTubing and started doing my research and, just like started like, what does a face mask consist of? What do you have to do? And then so I made my first face mask like the end of March. And then I wanted to make it just to see if I liked it, or even if it was something that I could do. And I end up feeling like that need of helping, because that was always, part of me, always helping people. And so I made my first face mask, and I'm like, okay, and then I kind of like tweaked it a little bit. And then I made one for my family. And then I just started putting up face masks on social media. And then it just went crazy. Like a lot of people from social media from all over the United States and Canada was reaching out to me, ordering face masks. And then in April, when the whole nation was shut down because of COVID, we were all on quarantine, and like the only stores that were open was Walmart. And well, I come from a small town, so we only have 2 stores anyways. But it was we just have one grocery store, and then we have Walmart, and those were the only 2 places that were open, and you couldn't, there was no place to shop or get supplies. And then if you ordered online, you were waiting for months because of the mail was slow. And then supplies, there was like no sewing machines or no like supplies because everybody was staying home and everybody was sewing and stuff, And so I had this idea for this real bougie face mask. And then I pulled out like all my materials, and I, was like, thinking about it. It took me like I know what I wanted. And then so I made the night and day mask, but I didn't really start it until like May, but just because I had a lot of orders, and so I finished it in May, like the end of May, and then I had a model, and then I had her model it for me, and I took the picture. And my favorite time of day is like, well, it depends on what season it is, because like here in Montana, like in the wintertime, it gets dark like at 5 o'clock. And that's not my favorite season, even though I'm a Montana girl. Winter is not my season, but like in the spring, summer, fall, it's a little better. And so this was, the end of spring, beginning of summer. And so there's that certain time of day, and like in Montana, we're called Big Sky Country. And that's called that for a reason. And so I look at the sky, a lot, because that's one of the things we do here in Montana in Big Sky Country. And so there's a certain time of the day when the sky is just this blue, and I love it. I love that blue color. And it's like between like 4, 6 o'clock, or about 5, between 5 and 6, 5 and 7 o'clock, right? Right before, about 2-3 hours right before the sun like goes down, there's this, And so I took a picture of my model. I took a picture of her at that time of my favorite time, going by the favorite color of the sky, my favorite color of the sky. And then I waited for a couple of days, and then I didn't post it until June, because I was called back to work. Because I was on like telework and stuff. Then I was called back to work as the essential employee. So then Oh, and then that's another thing. My day job, I do have a day job, and my day job is I'm the human resource generalist for the Chippewa Cree tribe. So my indigenous design and my fashion show coordination is on the side. But so I posted that picture and on social media that morning, like on my way to work, I posted it. And then, then when I was back at work, and I haven't been to work like in 3 months. So, so I was like catching up on my work and getting, caught up and stuff. And then like my phone started going crazy, and everybody was like, hey, check your phone, and, like missed calls and stuff. So I looked, and then here, like the picture, it got like 1,000 likes in like 1 hour, and it just got a whole bunch of shares, and then people from all around the world, like publications, blogs, fashion magazines, newspapers, TV stations, they all started contacting me. Like they started emailing, started messaging me and stuff. And then the night and day mask, it went viral. And I was just like, wow, it was quite the experience. And then people were like emailing me. Like I had hundreds of emails. I remember spending like hours of reading through my emails, listening to people, how they really appreciated how I incorporated like the night and day mask. It has Louis Vuitton material, and I cut up old Louis Vuitton purses that I collected from thrift stores. So people really appreciated how I like merged the French fashion house like with my culture and stuff, and it felt good to like hear people out, and they were sharing their stories and stuff, and people wanted to know like, where do you sell your stuff? How could I buy your stuff and everything? And then so that was like my push into a business, into my business. And so within the month, that was like in June, and then the following month, July 2020, I started my business. I got my website launched. I did research on what website to go with, and then I, did my business registration with the Secretary of State and got my EIN number, and, did all of those things that you do when you start a small business. So that's how I got the push. It was basically a push. I call it a push because I always did it. I just didn't put myself out there. I just didn't market myself and take all those steps, but it was the push from the people.